the one constant in all of the battles is probably just from the original fall of Satan, I will not serve. And I think that's probably the underpinning battle in the souls and the hearts of many women across the world, that they hear this little counter message, counter to the gospel, counter to the church's teaching, that I will not serve. And where Satan was saying it to humankind, to mankind, the feminist agenda is saying, I will not serve man. I will not serve the male species. They're not even talking about God. They're not talking about the church. They're just saying, I will not serve.
Hello and welcome back to HLI Ireland's Let's Talk. This is the weekly show that looks at all things life, faith and family through a Catholic lens, and I am your host, Lisa O'Hare. It is the summer. Praise God, the sun is shining. I hope it's still shining where you are. And we are delighted to begin a new topic. It's called the dignity of woman. This is going to be a beautiful topic, but so if you're a young girl watching on, a young woman, a mother, a grandmother, whether you're a young gentleman, a married husband or an older gentleman, we hope there's going to be something in this month for you. And we're going to begin, as always, with a testimony, and I am delighted to welcome, how will we describe her, Catholic wife and mother, and my very good friend, Therese McCrystal. Therese, welcome to the show.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Lisa. Thanks for having me.
So, we're going to call this episode Meeting at the Well. We are both two friends, as I said. We're Catholic mothers, we're wives. I not go into too much detail about the generation we belong to, but yeah, let's say we were teenagers in the 80s/90s. So we've quite a shared experience, and here we are in the 2000s, willing to share all of our experience on what it means to be a woman, what it means to be a Catholic woman in today's world. Therese, where do we begin? Maybe tell us a little bit about your own background, maybe a little bit about your own faith journey first, because maybe not everyone knows your own perspective and your own story, and it's lovely to put that into context for us.
Okay, lovely. Right, well, I'm 49. I'm in my Pentecost year, Lisa, 50 this year. And just so everyone knows, I want a big party. Okay, if any of my family say, does she want a big party? Say yes, she does. Okay. Pull out all the stops. So that's in August.
Praise God.
I was born in Birmingham in August 1973 to two Irish Catholic parents. My daddy was from Derry and my mom was from Mayo. And they were both practicing Catholics. My mom was in the Children of Mary. They were both pioneers. They were both involved in the parish, not involved in the parish like we would be today so much, but we would go to the parish every Sunday, and if there was events or dinner dances or things, we would do that kind of thing. So Catholicity was very much part of our identity. We would meet up with other Irish families, perhaps more so than Catholic families, but I think just by definition, it was always a Catholic gathering at that time during our school years. So I had cousins. I was the baby of 5. We had cousins who were 5, maybe 7 in their families. And so our garden would often be the meeting place for family birthdays or confirmations or Holy Communions. So, faith was a big part of us. I had a very blessed Catholic upbringing in my school life. I had a really good Catholic schools. My secondary school particularly, we still had nuns teaching at the time. I would say feminism was knocking at the door at the school. The abortion agenda was pushing through, contraception was pushing through, but our school, I would say, held back. And funnily, I recently went to give talks there, maybe 2 years ago, just before COVID. And it still has a very strong faith in the school, and the statues everywhere. And there's a very strong ethos in the school of Catholicity, which is lovely. And I spoke to some Muslim parents not long ago, and they said they send their children there because of the Catholicity or the discipline of the school, which I found very interesting. I went to the Oratory Parish for my formative life. And at 16, I look back now in horror. At 16, I left home and I went to work in a Catholic retreat centre. So there was obviously an element of faith there that propelled me. I really didn't want to finish school. I hummed and I hawed, and there was just no A levels that appealed to me. And I had gotten involved in the Catholic youth movement in our diocese, and we had a diocesan retreat centre. And 2 of us who were 16 actually were enlisted that year, a friend of mine, Dan Callow, and myself. And there was 5 others on the team. And it was a great year of formation. I look back now, who would take on a 16-year-old seriously to run retreats? But thank God I did it. And I would say at the time, it saved me from going down a very bad path. Providentially, that same summer, just before I started there, I was given a free pilgrimage spot to a certain Marian shrine in what was Yugoslavia. And I just heard Yugoslavia and sunshine and free spot. So I said, yeah, I'll go. Utterly oblivious to what was there. And so for 2 weeks, I basked in the sun and the pizza and the beer of Medjugorje. But I did have a profound experience there of the Eucharist, of Jesus present in the monstrance at about 3 o'clock in the morning. It was the first youth festival. And there was only a couple of hundred there, but it was incredible. And it was the example of other young people. So I think that sold me utterly on Catholicity versus any Christianity. So it was Our Lady, it was the Eucharist, and it was the teachings of the church. So that captured me and set me on a certain path. I came home, I went to work in the retreat centre for the year, and then from then on, basically, I've been involved in different Catholic apostolic outreaches. And then I married Patrick. So here we are.
How many children later?
Oh man, how many have I got? So I have 9 here and 8 or so in heaven by miscarriage. So we're looking forward to the big party up there. So it's a busy household, no need for TV. It's very exciting, never a dull moment. So, and trying to raise them in the faith.
Beautiful, beautiful. Wow, I mean, there's always a lot in that, Therese. I mean, I know you could talk about your experience on so many different levels. And I mean, for those of you who don't know, Therese is also a fantastic speaker in her own right, and has done some beautiful talks on womanhood, on marriage, on life, on the catechism, all sorts. So I want to pick your brains today, Therese, and sort of walk through the challenges for women today. I mean, the culture is throwing at us certain visions for womanhood that are completely contrary to the dignity of women, and indeed our faith and the Catholic vision for femininity and for womanhood. And maybe we could go through those challenges. You know, they tell us how to look, you know, how to interact, how to date, who to date, the kind of lifestyle, how many children to have. There's such an aggressive agenda against you know, young women, right from, you know, their very, very formative years. As you said, you were sheltered, but unfortunately our teenagers, our young girls of today are not.
Well, even just we were sheltered, and there was little bits chipping away at what women did or how women were, but now it's actually just being a woman. It's been attacked. Actually, just being woman is being tortured, basically. Women's souls have just been slain, basically, across the world on the altar of choice. You know, it's just shocking.
It is. Well, let's begin there, Therese. You know, I mean, what is your experience? You have young teenage girls growing up. What you know, given your own experience and given what you've learned and given sort of the apostolate that we work in, you know, let's begin to unpick some of those challenges, and then how we, you know, as slightly older generation women can respond to that for young girls.
I would say the one constant in all of the battles is probably just from the original fall of Satan, I will not serve. And I think that's probably the underpinning battle in the souls and the hearts of many women across the world, that they hear this little counter message, counter to the gospel, counter to the church's teaching, that I will not serve. And where Satan was saying it to humankind, to mankind, the feminist agenda is saying, I will not serve man, I will not serve the male species. They're not even talking about God. They're not talking about the church. They're just saying, I will not serve. So I think from the get-go, service is seen as a bad thing, whereas it is the Christian call. It's incumbent upon us that our happiness actually lies in the service of others. So when a radical feminist movement comes along and says, I will not serve, you will not serve, it's male domination, it's white supremacy, whatever they want to call it, you're automatically denying all those females a sense of peace, a sense of satisfaction, a sense of love, a sense of loyalty, all of those things that come with the Catholic call to mission, which ultimately is service for men and women. So in that regard, men and women aren't different. We're all called to serve by virtue of our baptism. But I think women are just being denied the gift of being their true selves and the gift of what they can bring to the table of the church. Even like you said, I have 6 girls and 3 boys. And I laugh, like there is so many differences between boys and girls. You could not make it up. They are utterly different with the boys have a very rugged, robust, sometimes vile approach to life, and the girls are generally a little gentler, not always, more creative, perhaps more inventive, more intuitive. And it's beautiful to see these differences, but they both need each other. You know, when the girls want to make something, build something, have something, they need the guys to come in with their perhaps more mechanical or engineering type brains. I'm not saying that all men are like this, and I'm not saying that all women are not. You know, it's just the general. And the guys, when they want to do something or they want to make something, whatever, they call the girls in for their flair, their charism, whatever it is that they bring. And we do need each other. And I think that's the opposite to the feminist call, is that we actually need, women need men and men need women. And it's trying to embrace that in today's culture is very hard to do.
It is, and you know, this is such a complex topic, and it takes a lot of unpacking, because, you know, maybe it's like the pendulum swing between, you know, women maybe having less opportunities and to do things or to experience life in certain ways. And when doors opened, because they really opened in our generation, you know, I was the first one, sort of, it was only maybe 5 or 6 girls in my class of engineering back at Queen's University. There'd be 120 20 boys. And so, yes, there was a certain, you know, ceilings being broken and opportunities being given to girls. And there was a realization, like you say, there are certain like differences in us, but then again, girls who are particularly talented at particular sports, or like myself, I was mechanically minded, were mathematically minded, and so then there was like, yeah, that pathway is open to you, fantastic. But there was no thought then behind, when you stretch out on these pathways, there's no thought as into the direction that you're heading. And I think that's one of the key things. So yeah, there is a very certain difference in how God created us, our physical anatomies. And certainly I can see it in marriage and your intuition, and certain things that my husband is good at, and certain things that I intuitively can manage with the children. But I think one of the things that I noticed, you know, growing up, same generation as yourself, was when the world was opened and all sorts of opportunities were given or open to girls, there was no thought as into how this affects your future life.
That's right.
Because the reality is, I always wanted to be a wife and mother. So I always had that clear sort of vision in my head. This career for me was sort of just a part of a journey, but I had no intention of that being my identity.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, maybe you could respond to that. You know, there are question marks over what our identity lies in.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I would agree. And just to clarify as well, there's a misconception out there that the church is down on women being mechanics, or down on women being engineers, or down on, that's like, it's an absolute lie from the pit of hell. The church affirms woman in her genius, is the phrase that John Paul II uses, that he calls it the genius of woman. And it's when she can marry that giftedness, that talent, that charism, that whatever it is, that intellect that God has given each specific woman, is laid at the service of mankind, is laid at the service of the church, at the service of the world. And John Paul II has some beautiful letters to women. There's a document, Mulieris Dignitatem, on the dignity of woman, or the dignity of motherhood. And so the church uplifts women, and she has this focus. She knows why the church needs women. She knows why the world needs the difference that woman brings. The church knows that men have a difference, women have a difference, and that together complementarity works. But again, it's laying that down at the service of one another, and that by loving one another through service, we each find fulfillment. We each find the answer to ourselves. Like yourself, Lisa, when I was at school, I hate using the word just, but I just wanted to be a wife and a mom. Like, I knew I loved being with children. I didn't want to be in a creche. I didn't want to be in a nursery. Didn't really want to be a teacher. But there was no category for being a stay-at-home wife or mom. And so you kind of just get shunted into an academic, well, sure, if you like that, you should be a nurse, or you should be a teacher, whatever. And, you know, and I started going down this road, and I started going down that road. And then I went to a college after school for a while, but I was getting shoved down a road, or not manipulated, I don't think. At that stage, maybe I was, that I just thought, this is not for me. I actually don't feel the call to this at all. And that's when I opted out, and I went to work in the Catholic Retreat Centre, where I just was free to use my gifting in the church, in the service of the church, even at such a young age. And I say that just to encourage younger viewers, or children, or moms, just to encourage your daughters in their gifting, encourage them in their genius, encourage them in their flair. And don't pinhole them, or what's the phrase, shoehole them into something that the world says they should do. We gave a talk, if I'm talking too long, please interrupt. we gave a talk at Youth 2000 some years ago. We split the group up between guys and the girls. And I felt inspired to say, I was at school, I wanted to be a wife and a mother, and I stand before you all today, girls, very happy to know that I am where God called me because I am a wife and a mother. And then I carried on with the talk and the church's teaching and blah, blah, blah. And there was 2 other female speakers. And at the end of that, we were in the lunch table in the marquee for lunch, and a young woman came up to me. She was about 32, 33, and she was crying. And she said, all I want is to be a wife and a mother, but I am at the top of my tier at work. She was a very high achieving accountant. She said, I'm at the highest office I can have in my work. I've got my PhD, I've got my master's, I've got this, that, and the other, all these qualifications. She said, and I am miserable. She said, it's empty at the top. It's lonely. And she said, when I heard your talk, she said, how amazing it is to be where God wants you to be, that you know that. And she said, I've spent years aching and searching. Is this where God wants me? I don't know if this, I don't know. And just plowing ahead, because she said she was put on a path through academia. And again, I'm not saying academia is wrong, but I'm going back to your observation that it's, what is it for? What is our qualification for? What is our giftedness for? If it's for the service of self and the gain of self, it will be miserable. But if it's for the service of others, it brings great joy to all involved, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that is the key, is that overall perspective. And you giving that focus on service is so important, because, you know, that sort of defines, you know, your pathway in your future and gives you the ultimate fulfillment. Because like you say, everything else can be empty. And there's also seasons in your life when you're young and when you're slightly old, you know, that you can enjoy all of the gifts and passions that you have. And of course, but, you know, and it's looking at that perspective of, again, where this leads me. And I think that is the tragedy or the difficulty, even I would say within sport. Funny, my girls have had this conversation, you know, talking about elite sport and girls and women and what they're prepared to sacrifice their bodies and put them through in certain stages of their life, and even their most fertile years, maybe between their 20s and their 30s. Sure. And such an interesting dimension, because I'm a big sports nut, and if I had the chance to go to the Olympics when I was 12, I would have done everything in my power to make that pathway happen. So it's so important to have that perspective to say, right, okay, these are fantastic skills and they bring such joy. Yeah. You know, the sport and does bring such a joy, and it's a different kind of a service when you're adding such a, you know, vitality of life. That's right. But then again, it's that, I guess it's the whole perspective of heaven. That's and right. As a mother, when you're looking at your children as well, if your perspective is getting them to heaven, it changes everything within your heart. And when you see those, you know, championship footballers, when, you know, when they kneel down and they say a prayer at the end of the win, or when you see them, you know, group hugging each other, or you see the babies running onto the pitch to hug their daddy who just got the winning goal or whatever, it's a completely different image, and it's a completely different euphoria, because you're celebrating the victory of the person, you're celebrating that goal, but you're also seeing the whole picture. You're seeing that beauty of, I'm not isolated. I'm just not trying to be victor on my own, you know, but together we made this win. And I think when you see, years and years ago, there was I don't know, was he Mexican, some South American footballer knelt down and he blessed himself, and he gave his victory back to God. And he said, only for him am I here. And it was really touching. And this was in international media, and they just didn't know what to do with it, because it's like, it's not about the win. It's about who gave him the win. And it's, so you can have that sport, you can have that championship, and it could be where the Lord wants to use you as witness. You know, ultimately that's our call. He's calling us to be witness, and it's where in the field. You know, I mentioned John Paul II earlier in his letter to women. He talks about women in science, women out at work, women in the apostolic life, women in religious life. He talked to us all, and he said the society needs you in those places, but it's to bring your womanhood to those places, not to bring your academia. It's to bring to the table of academia. The church is asking you to bring your softness, your gentleness, your intuition, whatever it is, whatever your particular strengths are. John Paul II, that says, woman, you are needed. You know, you are respected and needed in these places. I think I want to, you know, pick up on what you said there about that togetherness, and that, you know, when you say you see a vision of the bigger picture and the family and the community and the parish, and it does something, and there's nothing like, you know, a huge number of people together in heart and mind, whether it's a football match or a huge worship service or whatever it is. There is something that does to our hearts, and I want to talk, you know, a bit more about that, because the idea of women at the well, there is in our culture this pitting women against each other. I want to be better looking than you. I want to have a better career than you. I'm showing my life in a better perspective. And there is an underlying current of pitting women against each other. And I want to just explore with you the importance of togetherness and supporting each other. It leads to such a richness, because the Catholic life is a lonely one. Yeah. It can be against this culture. As I said before, with regard to the number of children you have, even, the looks that you get when you say you're with your 8th or 9th child, they can be humorous at times, but they can also be quite isolating. And it's so important then for us to, all throughout our journey, as I said, in teenagers and young adults, motherhood, and into our elder years, to be together. What's your experience been of women together in the church, in the heart of the church, serving and loving God our Father?
It's funny, just as you talked about, the image. I remember, I think it was 1984. I can't remember. There was some big win that Ireland got, and we were staying with my aunt, who was a sister, religious sister. There was 4 or 5 nuns in the convent, and the Irish team were coming home on the bus. They were coming down O'Connell Street in Dublin, and like the whole nation was in Dublin to meet them. And the nuns were in this huge dilemma whether to give us dinner or to go into Dublin to see the boys. And the nuns themselves were just going, we won, Therese, we won. I was so tiny, like I was only like 10 or 11 at the time. And I thought they were la, but my brother was so impacted that these nuns knew about football and they knew about this international match. So we all went into Dublin, and the open top bus and the team coming home and Paki Bana holding the cup up, and it was it was a really glorious win, and it was just like, but it was that sense of we won, those boys won for us. And I think if we could look at the church in the same view, if we could say that we are team players for the church, if we could try our hardest to have the winning goal for Jesus, to have that, whatever is the goal of our life or the goal of our work or the goal of our family, that we're trying to get it into the net of Jesus, which ultimately is probably his sacred heart. We're kicking into his sacred heart all the time, and we want the victory to be his. We want everything, every effort that we make has to be for the good of others. And it's the church is the only place I have found that, the only place I have found an expectation of me to go higher, to be better. I did find at the end of my schooling that there was a bit of a blah, like, sure, do it if you can and make the most of it. There'll always be something to do. Whereas the church, I found, as I got more involved in apostolic ministry, it was like, how can we make this better? How can we make it clearer? How can we bring this teaching in a more sound way to people? So there was this sense of improvement all the time. And the irony is that most of my friends, when they left school, whether they left at 16, 18 or 23, 24 after degrees, they had no desire for learning left. They had none. They were just like, I am done with books. I am done with learning. But I have found that the more I've got involved in the church, the more I've got involved in HLI, the more I've got involved in Youth 2000, I want to learn more. I want to know more. I want to read more. And I want to share more. I'm glancing down like I have my catechism. I want to know more of the church's teaching on woman, on family, on the world, on ecology, economy, whatever it is. The church has something to say, and our whole lives can be improved if we are winning for the team, if we're inserting ourselves to make the church better. Not changing her teaching, but maybe translating her teaching to those who don't know it yet.
Yeah, I agree. It's so strange because I'm the same. You're really, at this stage of your life, it's like the time when you have the least amount of time to read and learn. And that's when the desire is placed in your heart going, Lord, what is this all about? I wish I had hours to read these books and I don't have 5 minutes.
Thank God for Audible.
And I can't even do it. I'm a reader. I need to have it in front of me. But I think as well, with the togetherness of the church, it is bringing together, yes, the learning, the growing, the stretching, but also the times of comfort and sorrow and pain.
Right.
That we can, as I said, it's back to that idea of perspective. The perspective of pain is different when you look at it through the lens of faith. And I do believe only other sisters in faith can understand when you're going through a particular pain, because the pain doesn't go away. But it is in a different perspective when you're looking at it from a heavenly lens, when you're looking at, that you talked about miscarriage, when you're looking at the loss of a child through miscarriage, there's always a hope there. There's a certain amount of peace there. And of course, as I said, the pain is no different.
That's right.
And it's so important that women come together at the well.
Yeah.
They come together over the kitchen, over a cup of tea. They come together to walk the journey together. I think it's so important that we're not isolated. And I mean, you've been a very good friend to me over the years, the cup of tea, or maybe at the beach. Therese's tea at the beach is a whole...
My living room.
I've never seen
on the pier.
I have never seen anybody like this woman at the beach. You've got the crock pot, you've the tea, you've got the whole works.
We're just starting the season again now. It's great. The sun shines back, you know. But even that, like we found over the years, like we do this like mad shebang at the beach, and we try and live our summers at the beach. But it's an outreach as well. Like kids come and they join our family, and some of them might be in the faith, some of them might not be. But we'll do rosaries, we'll play football, we'll have barbecues, we'll try and start with mass if we can, or we'll meet after mass. And it's that Catholicity isn't just your Sunday mass. It's, you know, it should be weaved into our approach. And you know, we've had a couple of kids who are a bit loose lipped or a bit loose whatever, loose clothed. And you know, we're kind of, these are friends of ours, so you know, you must be cold there with nothing on. Let me put this over you know, and trying to just encourage them in the walk, and love them through whatever decisions they're making. And also just trying to get people to think, you know. I think, yeah, like it's beautiful imagery of the women at the well. Jesus came to meet the woman at the well. Like it was a normal place to be, at the well, gathering your water with other women at that time of the day. Um, and I think we have forgotten, perhaps in our digital era, we've forgotten that we need to meet one another. We need to pray for one another. We need to support one another. I remember over my first miscarriage, it was like a friend of mine had had a miscarriage in Dublin, and she had allowed us into her pain. This was a couple of years before. But because she had done that, I was able to go through mine with the grace and the knowledge and the blessing of her experience in faith and how she did it. And then in turn, since I've had mine, there's been many people asking me questions, and how do you do it? And physically, how do you go through this? And what do I need to do? What do I need to prepare? Can I call the priest? What happens? Does the baby get blessed? All those questions. But I got all of my answers from the women at the well, and the wellspring being the church. So my Catholic women, my go-to hub of church knowledge. And it's not that theological knowledge, it's that pastoral knowledge, it's that the care of the heart, the love of the heart, the cups of tea, as you say, and understanding, but also calling people higher and not allowing them to stay stuck. And I don't mean for any moment to pull people out of a grief abruptly. What I mean is to escort them through it, like you mentioned, to that place of hope, that there is more, there is something else to do. And again, that's the only thing, the church is the only place I have found that higher call, that life goes on, and now I need to do the next thing. And you know, I'm perpetually tortured with this. I'm not doing enough for the church. I need to do more. I need to do more. We need to get the message out there that this is the place of hope. So we're constantly looking for outroads and inroads where we can get the message of the good news of Jesus into people's minds.
Well, speaking of that and getting the message out, tell us a little bit about what's coming up for the Women of Grace conference in September. That's
Great
very
segue.
exciting news.
Great segue, Lisa. So, Full of Grace, for those of you who have never heard of it, Full of Grace was a beautiful study book, not a study book, a reading book that Jonette Benkovic wrote many years ago, on the women and the abundant life, women and the dignity of woman, the church's teaching, the lives of the saints. And she wrote it as just a reading book, and then several people said, oh, we use this in our Bible study, we use this in our women's group, could you make us a study book to go with it? So she did. So she made this study book to go with it, and it's an 8-week course on the dignity of woman, and it is the best course I have ever done. I did loads over the years, and the Protestant church for a long time was the only place to go for outreach on women. But this was, for me, it was an answer to prayer. After 10 years of praying, like a little incidental, we were in the United Nations with Patrick before we were married, before we were dating, and there was such an onslaught against women across the world from the feminist movement. And I remember thinking, what is the answer to this? I do not know. Like, I was only like a young woman at the time. But it really showed me the very real attack that was at woman and was coming down the line. And just at the very beginning, this was 20 years ago, they were talking about the transgender thing coming 20 years ago. And we were like, no, that just sounds a bit nuts. And here we are, it's at us. So when I came home, we prayed, we worked, we did several things for years. But when this came on our doorstep, it was like, that is the answer. That is the thing I need to do to study, to know more. And the good news is we are having an event based on the themes of Women of Grace. Based on, there's about 8 themes, I think, or 8 chapters that you study in the course. So we're going to cover those in our weekend, which I think we said was the 15th to the 17th of September. And we're holding it in the Drummond Hotel in County Derry. Fabulous location, fabulous spot. It's a beautiful part of the world. So the things we're going to cover are things like, it's all pertaining to women, women saints, teaching of woman on the catechism, and the Bible, characters from the Bible and stories from the Bible. So every week you meet a fabulous female saint to help us on our journey, and that whole communion of saints, that women have gone before us, and that we then have to be spiritual midwives to the generation coming after us, that we have to help them move forward. So there's the special call and gift of woman. There's prayer, which is strength for the abundant life. There's praise and thanksgiving, obedience, that's a hot one, wisdom, Eucharist, the heart of the abundant life, and resurrection, and then carrying out the mission. I have to say, I've loved this course. I've done it so many times, and I've met women who did it once, did it twice, did it 3 times, and they said it wasn't until the 3rd time that I understood this. It wasn't until the 2nd time that I did this. And it's learning that the church teaches beauty, truth, nobility, and it's all this wonderful teaching. And it's often people come to the group and they go, I didn't know the church taught that. I had never heard that before, or I thought the church was down on women. This is a revelation to me. So we're hoping from this weekend in September to launch Women of Grace again across Ireland. It's been sleeping for a few years, so we're hoping to set up groups. We might set up a Zoom group nationally. We're not sure what route we're going to go. We'll see what the interest is like. But book your tickets soon before they sell out, and we'll see you there, please God.
Fantastic. What a brilliant way to end the show. Something like that to look forward to. You mentioned about the church, and I think I'd love to have you back next week, Therese, to delve more into what the church teaches about women and the dignity of women, because again, as you said there, it's a very, very misunderstood concept. And so many people have so many distorted views of what the church thinks, and they're rallying against this, straw man argument about women in the church. And I'd love to delve into that next week. So will you come back next week and join us?
I would love to. Thank you, Lisa. It'd be great.
Folks, if you've enjoyed this conversation, please like and share the video and subscribe to the channel. It's so important to get the message out there. It's all part of the YouTube algorithms. We need you to like, we need you to comment, we need you to share. So yeah, ring that bell, subscribe to this channel, and help us grow and help us get the good news out to everyone in Ireland and everyone across the world. Therese, thanks a million. See you next week.
You're very welcome. God bless, Lisa. Bye-bye.
So thank you everyone for watching. We will continue this theme of the dignity of women next week. As I said, we'll have Therese back and we'll delve into church teaching, so you don't want to miss that. Remember that we at HLI Ireland are working and praying for an Ireland where God is first, life is sacred, and the family is cherished. God bless.